Thank you, Danny, for being on today with our first interview. We are very excited. Why don't you start off and just tell us like a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do in the real estate world?
So I kind of do a little bit of everything in the real estate world. I am a real estate agent. I am a rep for a title company, and I am an active investor here in the Tampa Bay market. A couple years after law school, I kind of fell into real estate and loved it and never looked back.
That's awesome. I didn't know you actually went to law school, Danny. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I graduated from Eckerd here in St. Pete, and
Okay.
The dream was always becoming an attorney, and
Right.
I didn't really. I worked towards that goal, and eventually becoming an attorney. That dream turned into being a sports agent, and I ended up going to law school down in Naples, and I did a lot of a lot of classes focused on contracts and negotiation, that sort of thing. So I got good in that niche, but after law school, I kind of didn't know what to do with myself. It was a very hard niche to get into. Tried actively for a couple of years, and it wasn't really working out. And I was miserable doing everything else.
Right.
At which point I fell in with a title company that was just starting up in Naples. And at the time, I didn't even know what title insurance was, much less, what the closing agents did or anything like that. I just figured they were the ones who made sure title was clear, and that was it. And we closed and good to go. And the position I was in, I was kind of thrown to the wolves, and I ended up loving it. I fell in love with every aspect of it, and then one thing led to another, and I kept growing and doing more and doing different things. So I'm very active in this market, in this industry.
That's awesome. I don't know if you know this, but I actually went to law school for a year as well. And my goal was always to be an attorney and go into real estate. And I just became too busy at the time. Maybe I'll go back, but it's interesting to get your perspective because I don't know, if it'd be applicable, if I even went and finished and completed. So it's interesting.
It's one of those things, now that I'm in real estate, my wife jokes because she was an attorney in Brazil.
Okay.
And we both have this education. She jokes now that I'm in real estate, now we'll be able to pay off the student loans.
That's oh gosh.
But I'm very blessed in that I studied law, in my opinion, because it gives me a different perspective. It gives me the ability to kind of think outside of boxes that people didn't even realize existed. I look at things from a totally different point of view when I'm doing my contracts, when I'm negotiating things with people, or even just the simple drafting of a contract on the retail end. We have our standard as is real estate contract that we use for a lot of deals. But there's certain things in there that a lot of agents don't know or don't understand, and they still get wrong. And I saw it all the time on the title side when I would get these contracts and, things would just not be filled out correctly.
That's really interesting. That's interesting to know. So now when was the moment that you decided you want to be committed to real estate? Was there I know you talked about starting to work in Naples for the title company, but was there a moment that it kind of clicked that you said, hey, I enjoy this and I want to get more into the investor side and more into, making a career out of this?
So I worked in title for a couple of years before making the switch over to investor, and making the switch, but, I guess growing into the investor side of it. I worked in title and I really enjoyed working in title. And that was my thing. I was an order opener. I was a processor. I was a closer. I pretty much did everything with the exception of post-closing in the title world. And to be frank, I was somewhat content with where I was. And my wife is very entrepreneur minded, and she's been feeding that into my head ever since we met. And little by little, I started wanting to branch out, do things on my own. I wasn't 100% sure what to do with myself, but I had met several real estate investors through the title work.
That's awesome.
Namely, the two title companies I used to work for in the past several years. Two of those companies were owned by real estate investors who were very active in their respective markets, and it was something that I was familiar with, but I didn't know. Um, I fell into, after Hurricane Irma, we kind of had a little bit of financial hardship between evacuation, moving, because we had moved from Naples to Tampa at the time, and a whole bunch of other things that happened more or less right around the same time. So I started looking for side gigs,
Okay.
and just something like a side hustle, something like that to help us make a little bit more money. And every time I Googled something, real estate kept showing up, and Bigger Pockets and all their stuff kept appearing in my searches. And I kept getting angry because I kept thinking to myself, well, you got to have money to do this. And that's something I don't have. And one day I got so upset and frustrated that this is all that kept popping up that I started reading the articles and the books and everything. And I was like, wow, this is something that I can do myself with the resources that I currently have.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked at it for several months, and I learned everything I could. I learned every strategy I could. And then I got my first deal done. And it was so thrilling and so satisfying that that was the moment that I said, okay, I can keep doing this. I can make a living doing this. I can make a whole life out of this. So that was my aha moment. The second I got that first deal done, that was it.
That's awesome. And you know what? I can probably attest to the exact same thing. I remember when I did my first flip in Kentucky and I sold it, I was hooked. So I could not, I was like, this is where I want to go. And I wish that I'd gotten into it, 10 years before I did. So
that's exactly how I feel. I wish I'd gotten into this, before I even went to law school, because my life would have been totally different.
Understood and agree. 100%. 100%.
And I wouldn't have those student loans.
There you go. You wouldn't have to pay them off. There you go. That's so funny.
Awesome. Danny, tell us a little bit, what's your favorite part about flipping real estate investing?
Oh, it's satisfying. And when you turn one of these distressed properties that are not the prettiest, and you go in and you see the whole process, from it going from ugly to pretty, and you see the evolution. For me, being able to build something like that, and even though I'm not doing it with my own hands, but being able to be part of that and building it, that is just so incredibly satisfying to me. That and making money. I do like making money too, but I mean,
That's always the extra plus.
the process and everything, I love it. Everything about it. I love being able to watch the houses get dolled up, and I think I don't know, it's something so entirely different to everything I'd ever done prior to that, and I was so miserable doing all of that being able to do this now, I guess that's what makes it so satisfying for me.
That's great. And Danny, I've always thought of you as being very savvy, in the Tampa market. Can you, in your own, perspective, touch on the Tampa market for people who don't know, how would you explain it? What are the moving factors? Kind of, what do you see? It's a very unique market. And I actually have a lot of people that always ask, if they should get involved in the Tampa market, or if, what kind of the makes it tick.
So the Tampa market is, in my opinion, as far as real estate and real estate investing, probably one of the most unique markets in the nation, in that we have, no matter what your strategy is, you can have success investing here. Whether you're a wholesaler, whether you're a flipper, whether you're a buy and hold, whether you do multifamily, the 5 or bigger multifamily, there is literally something for everybody in this market. And there are ways for you to constantly make money in this market. I think it is one of the most rapidly changing markets, because our cost of living isn't comparable to what you see in a lot of other places. So our cost of living is lower, but the home prices keep going up. Or, I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Yeah, we have more buying power here is what I mean to say. So you have people that are able to afford homes here that they wouldn't be able to afford in other markets. So the flipping is very, very active. On top of that, we have an enormous market as far as wholesalers. Some very good at what they do, some not. Some that are very, very new and they're learning, and some that are very, very new and they give up quickly. But we have so many in this market because everybody sees what's going on, and real estate is such
Right.
a thing.
Hmm.
They all want their piece of the pie and they want to get into it. But I mean, just everything that you could possibly imagine in this market, you can make money doing it. I think one of the biggest cons in our market, and I use that word lightly, is that we are so saturated.
Right.
We are very. Tampa has the most investors, I believe, in an area in a single market. It has the most educated investors in that market. I mean, we literally have the guys who wrote the books on strategies that we currently use are living and active in this market. So it's one of those things that, it's very competitive. You've got to know your strategies. You've got to know how to make a deal work for you. But if you can, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity.
That's awesome. No, I completely agree.
I mean, not only as an investor myself, but as a realtor, I work with investors, and currently I've got one investor that I'm currently hunting um, large multifamilies that he is looking to invest in. Anything, commercial properties, uh,
Hmm.
warehouses, that sort of thing, because we've got the Port of Tampa, we've got plenty of areas from here where I live in downtown all the way up through Seminole Heights and up to the university that there are plenty of large multifamilies available. So I'm currently on the hunt for him. And that's not even a deal for me. That's just for me to help him find something.
Right. Right. No, any luck there? What do you has I guess the big changing factor in all markets now, and it's interesting to see how they've been affected. Is definitely everybody dealing with COVID and at least being having a plan if things do shift. What are you seeing in that perspective? And then when you're looking for multifamily, do you see any buying opportunities coming to the market because people are want to offload because they're uncertain about the market?
I, the honest to God truth is, just like everywhere else in the nation, inventory is super low here.
Hmm.
On the retail side, I've got two buyers in my pipeline that are looking for homes that are very, very specific that what they want, a little bit more higher end luxury, but inventory is so low that there's not a lot of options as far as what they want. So
Right.
look, and every day I'll check again and I'll say, hey, this one popped up on the market, or this one is still on the market. Do you want to look at this? And it's a little frustrating on that end because inventory is so low, and with buyers like that, they're being extremely picky. Uh,
Right.
it's the same thing with the commercial properties. There are properties out there. There are investors who are holding on to them because they know that they're going to make their money back even if there is a recession. So one of the things with those bigger properties and the higher cap rates and everything, if you do it right, it's almost that recession proof investing. It's one of those things that you can hold on to it and ride the wave out, and you'll be fine on the other end.
Hmm.
Um, I know specifically a couple of these larger multifamilies that I'm looking for this investor. One guy, he's old and he just wants to cash out. That's why he's interested in selling his. And another gentleman, he's trying to get himself equity, capital, so he can leverage that into a new development project he's working up in New Tampa.
Wow.
So everybody has their reasons for selling or holding on to it. It just kind of depends. But yeah, I do find opportunities, and when even when looking for the off market stuff, you talk to everybody, has their price. Everybody's interested in selling at one point or another. It's just finding the time and the magic number.
That's great. That's great. Leah, you had some questions too, didn't you?
Yes. So Danny, what's something that's been unique about working with Coastal Equity Group with myself and Alex?
You guys are so attentive and so on the ball. It is fantastic. I love working with you guys, because anytime I have an issue, anytime that I have a question, anytime that I even when I'm referring people to you guys, it's so wonderful, because I know that, I've got both your numbers. I can call you at any time. We can talk about deals. We can talk about what's going on, or we can talk about the people I'm referring to you. And, it's always, you guys are always there for me. It's fantastic. And you guys are spot on with closing quickly.
I appreciate that, Danny. And also just to add to that, you said you both have our numbers, all the above. You're very respectful of our time, so I really appreciate that.
I certainly try.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get clients where they will call you 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, Saturdays, Sundays. And it's nice to work with a client who's respectful, and understands, hey, maybe they can't get to you right this second, but, they'll get back to me. So I appreciate that.
The truth is, life happens. Like if one of you, like if I call both of you today and I ask you a question on a deal, if you don't get back to me today, I know you're getting back to me tomorrow. And the worst case scenario is I can always shoot you a text. I can always shoot you an email. And at some point, somebody's going to respond. And I know, and I'm comfortable with that. I know that I'm always going to get a response from you guys.
Awesome. Well, that makes us feel like we're doing an okay job. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So Danny, what are your future goals in real estate? Like if you were to put together a 5-year plan, I know that's hard to know, but especially when it comes to real estate, what do you want to kind of achieve in the next 5 years?
So, my biggest dream is going back to kind of my roots in the industry. I am very, very, very actively trying to get myself together and get everything I need together to open up my own title company one
day. That is great.
I mean, aside from that, I would love to maintain my real estate license, keep working that. Short-term goals, establish my success, because I am a relatively newer agent in that respect. Establish myself, my reputation, get some success on that end, and hopefully build myself a team, eventually build myself up into my own brokerage, and just continue with the flipping and eventually get into the buy and hold.
That's awesome. That is great.
Yeah, that's a good plan. We're looking forward to it.
I know who's going to fund the deal, so I was just better at finding them.
I love it.
Do you have any tips for somebody who is just starting out, maybe like hasn't done their first flip yet, but is like looking at it? Like, what would be your advice to somebody just getting started in the real estate investing world?
And I would even add someone in the Tampa market, just because it's so tertiary, it's so unique, like you said. So it's maybe someone starting off in the Tampa market. What would you?
If you want to start off in this market, the one thing I recommend, and this is how I genuinely got started. Like after I would get out of work at the title company I was with, I would hit up every single RIA meeting I could find. And the biggest reason was I was studying a lot at home. Like I bought books. I never took a course. I never took any of these flipping courses or wholesaling courses or any of that. But I bought lots of books on the subjects, and I read as much as possible, and I studied everything. So I knew the strategies. I knew how to use them, and all of that was great. But theory, practice. And I had the theory down packed. I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was talking about. Implementation. I
Right.
went to these RIA meetings, and the reason I went to these RIA meetings is to watch how these other guys were doing the implementation. There is a meeting, not was. There is a meeting down in St. Pete. It's in a Denny's, I mean, of all places.
I love that.
But you go into that meeting and you watch how these guys are doing deals all morning long. They're constantly throwing deals at each other. They're constantly making moves. There is money going across the table at all points during the meeting. I was blown away by this specific meeting, and I learned so much about the implementation and the practice of everything I knew. I would go to these meetings, and this is actually where I got my first deal done. I went in and I had just gotten a property under contract, had no idea where to go for funding because I didn't know you at the time. And I was kind of nervous, and I didn't know what to do. And I put my deal out there, and everybody kind of flocked to me on the deal because it wasn't a big money maker, but it was a decent enough deal for a flip.
Mm-hmm.
And we were able to get ourselves and everybody involved in it, or I was able to get some people to join JV with me, and we established it to the point where it worked out for everybody, and I got my first deal done. And I was going into my first flip, and and the reason I understood everything about how we structured our deal was because I had spent so much time going to these meetings and watching and learning. So go to the meetings, talk to people. Your best resource is other investors.
Right.
If you can figure out what they're doing and how they're making money, you can do it too.
That's great advice. I completely agree. Awesome. Well, Danny, thank you so much for your time. I know everybody's time is valuable, so I don't want to take any more of it up. And I know we all have long weeks ahead, but thanks for letting us pick your brain, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Danny.
We'll talk soon. Thank you so much.
Take care.